We're not necessarily going to follow it, but we have one. I'm going to ask our chair of the Computer Arts Society, Nick Lambert, to give us a short introduction or a short welcome. And then I'm going to give you an update on one of our big projects, the Computer Arts Archive, which will feed into information about Page and the BCS exhibitions. We're going to have a little chat about microarts, which should have been presented here 2 years ago, and is now being presented here 2 years late for some reason. I don't know what happened, but we ended up being 2 years late. And then I'm going to talk, or rather we're going to hand over to John, who's going to talk a little bit about his book. It was mentioned for those physically here, he gave a short presentation earlier. I think he's now going to talk a bit more, maybe take some questions. And then afterwards, we're going to have some drinks, but I sort of, obviously, the logistics practicing hasn't quite worked out, because everyone's got their drinks here. But hopefully, those of you at home, or wherever you are, have some drinks as well. So, Nick, if I hand over to you briefly, do you want to just say a few words? So this is Nick Lambert, Chair of the Computer Arts Society.
Oh yeah, good evening one and all. Can you hear me there?
Yes.
Yes. Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Sean. Thank you.
Spricht wieder in Englisch, was ich überhaupt nicht verstehen kann, der Nick Lambert.
Sean, can you mute your thing?
Da musst du mir mal sagen, ob du das verstehst.
Eva, your microphone's on. If you could, thanks. Brilliant. Okay, so thanks very much. Welcome again to another EVA. It's very good that EVA's back in person. Even if I'm not there right now, I'll be there from Wednesday onwards, just to promote Charlie Gear's keynotes on Wednesday at noon. So I'll be there for that and thereafter. It's great again, just having seen Graham receive a very well-deserved award there. I think I should just say just how much we owe to the EVA committee for keeping everything on the road. And it's been great. I think this partnership that CAS and EVA have had now for well over a decade, bringing everyone together every summer, and obviously takes a great deal of work and coordination. I think particular thanks obviously to Jonathan, to Graham, to John, to the rest of the committee, and everyone else who's really contributed to make that possible. So, I think it's been an excellent partnership, and very much want to see all of that continue. Talking partnerships, of course, the work that Sean has been doing really to get the Computer Arts Archive together, to find a home for it, to actually then start growing it as well. That's been a multi-year effort, and we're very much indebted to the work that Sean has been doing to put those together. And I think now what we're looking forward to is the expansion of CAS's publication schedule as well. We're going to get Page back on the road. Also more exhibitions to come in partnership with the British Computer Society. And I think as everybody begins to come back really to doing things in person, it'll be great to really have exhibitions to showcase what the Computer Arts Society has been doing. Various artists, both old and new, who've been associated with CAS will be showcased. And I think we're very much looking forward to all of that. And you might say then, well, what's going to be the future for CAS? Well, one thing in CAS's future is, of course, that I will be stepping down as chair at the end of this year. I've also been in post for over a decade. I think it's very important society gets a little bit of new blood and some new thinking. And, I'm certainly not going to walk away entirely. I think it's very important now that we really look around for somebody new to lead us as well. So just saying, not saying goodbye forever, but it's certainly quite an exciting prospect, I think, that we could have some new leadership in Computer Arts Society too. That said, it's been a very enjoyable decade plus at the helm, and very much indebted to all the artists and all our contributors and everybody else who's really sort of made this possible. And we're looking forward then to some good future programs as well. So without further ado, back to Sean. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Nick, and thanks for all your hard work. And I'm sure you'll carry on doing more hard work in the future, but maybe not quite so stressful. So I want to give you a short presentation to give you an update of what's happened to the Computer Arts Archive in particular during the past 2 years. So as I mentioned earlier, the plan was 2 years ago, really, to be launching this project here at what was the new BCS. It's been like this for 2 years now. And the opening exhibition was going to be Jeff Davis's microarts. Well, of course, COVID changed a lot of our plans, but we have managed to keep the project going, ticking over. And I feel we're now launching it 2 years after we planned to, but we're launching it on the back of 2 years of not insignificant activity. So in many ways, we're ahead of of where he would have been 2 years ago, despite the COVID delay. So let me just make sure I'm in the right window. Okay, so the Computer Arts Archive. So this is a project that involves obviously the Computer Arts Society. And what we're looking to do is build an archive of materials from Computer Arts Society artists and associated artist projects and so on. That will really follow on from the archival work that was done, well, 10, 15 years ago now by Nick and colleagues. The earlier project took the existing Computer Arts Society archives and got them into a form that was ready to donate to the V&A Museum. They became part of what is now, I'd say, the UK's most significant computer arts archive, computer arts collection, based at the V&A, and not just now involving Computer Arts Society archives, but Patrick Prince and others have donated work. Really is quite a significant archive, and it owes a lot to the Computer Arts Society and to people at the V&A who ensured that that work was kept. So this project follows on from that in a way. I've set it up as what's known as a KIT, which is a non-profit company, so that any material donated to the archive are not my personal property or anyone's personal property. They're owned by not a charity, but a community organisation. So Computer Arts Archive is a non-profit company that collects, exhibits and promotes computer arts for the benefit of artists, audiences, I should have maybe memorised this, audiences, curators, educators and researchers. To be fair, I wrote it 2 years ago.
Well, it's a good thing you wrote it down.
So like all mission statements, it's rather verbose because I tried to capture all the things that I thought this project should be about. So we collaborate with other collections, museums and galleries to explore the impact of digital culture and ensure that computer art is recognised as a significant contemporary art form. With a rich and diverse history. That is important. I think probably all of us who know a little bit about computer art know that computer artists are terrible when it comes to history. And I think our job is to fill in some of that history, make sure the contemporary computer artists understand that it's not just about the new. Computer arts as a contemporary art form has to understand its history. And in particular, we work closely with the Computer Arts Society, a member-based organisation founded in 1968. So the Computer Arts Archive is a separate company that will look after the collections, and it works closely with the Computer Arts Society. So what's happened? Well, launched in 2020, no, we're launching now as far as I'm concerned. We weren't able to launch 2 years ago. But what we have a physical space in Leicester, and I'll show you some pictures shortly. We have a growing collection of work, which is actually it's already quite surprisingly quite large. And we're developing a relationship with Montfort University in Leicester. And my hope is that they will provide a storage space for us to maintain the archive and hopefully develop projects in the future. And we're also, of course, looking for funding. The ideas I had for funding 2 years ago are still valid, but we're having to start the plan now rather than starting 2 years ago. It just wasn't possible to do the things we wanted to do 2 years ago. So what have we got in terms of collections? Well, of course, we have more recent CAS materials. So the early CAS materials have gone to V&A, which is great. Stuff that hasn't gone to the V&A, I'm starting to collect that. And of course, we've had 15 years of CAS activities, of which we've generated a moderate amount of material. So they're being collected. We have the CAS 50 collection, which was the exhibition that I put together to help us celebrate 50 years since the start of the Computer Arts Society. And that is growing. And importantly, we have the EVA archive. And I'll show you some pictures of the EVA archive in a minute, which is a lot of material collected over 30, in fact, more than 30 years relating to this conference in London, but also the conferences around the world under the EVA umbrella. We have the Edward Inatovich archive. So he was responsible for the Sensor, pioneering early kinetic sculpture, and the family have donated his personal archive to the Computer Arts Archive. So we're very happy to have that. And already we've started going through it, and there's some quite phenomenal things in there. We have the Micro Arts collection that Jeff Davis has donated, and that's on display here at BCS Moorgate. We are getting the ICEA physical archive, so materials collected by the ICEA conference. And then we have my own personal collection of artworks, not just my own, ephemera, CD-ROMs, videos, materials dating from the 90s to the present day. And then we have some additional donated materials from artists such as Jack Tate, Roger Saunders, and Stroud Cornock. Lovely families here today. And the plan is really to grow those donated collections, to offer a safe place for work that, you know, the worst case scenario, it could end up in a skip. You know, we are literally rescuing important artworks from, you know, quite ignominious potential ending. So what does it look like? Well, this is what it looked like 2 years ago. A rather nice, tidy little office. That's tidy for me. But then we started being given loads of stuff like this. That might be Edward Inatovich's archive, or it might be EVA. They're both pretty similar. And so it ended up looking like this. Now we moved from our little space to a much bigger space, but it still looks like this. This was taken just a few weeks ago. However, the big space is big enough for us to sort this out and to start turning it into a visitable archive. Infrastructure. So we've achieved one thing. We had our initial space, and then when that became too small, I found a better space in Leicester. And they're at a reasonable cost. There are costs involved in this project, but they're not astronomical. We have a temporary website. I call it temporary because it was literally meant to be a 3-month website, and it will change. Called the computerartsarchive.com. We have the basis of a searchable catalogue, which we'll launch later in the year. So that's an index of everything we have in a searchable and browsable form. We also have access to education and exhibition spaces in Leicester, where I'm based, but also here in London, in particular the BCS. And we also have a PhD student. Sean Carroll is associated with the archive. He's at De Montfort University, and he's looking at using AI tools to extract information, knowledge from digital archives such as ours. So it's good to have a student associated with us. If I move on to the next screen. The website, Computer Arts Archive, has the mission statement and a bit of information about some of our collections. Hasn't really been touched much for the last year because I'm focusing my effort on the new catalogue, which looks like this. It doesn't look very exciting, but anybody who knows about cataloguing knows that the hard bit is putting all the data in. Making it look pretty is pretty easy. So we have an infrastructure in place for this catalogue, and I think this is the publications, or just the first page of publications. So my personal collection of computer arts related books exceeds 100 titles. That's going to be in the archive. Plus, of course, we'll have all the EVA proceedings. We'll have additional materials that people have donated, and then we have artworks as well. It will be quite a significant archive when we launch it. So just a reminder, this is the space we now have. It's slightly further back, so you can see we're not literally jam-packed with boxes. We are pretty jam-packed. When we've got shelving and so on in there, it will be fairly spacious. I do see this as an intermediate space. As I mentioned, I would like to move the materials to De Montfort University and benefit from being part of a university in terms of funding opportunities, but also long-term commitment to making sure that the archive is stored potentially for free. And we've also started doing exhibitions. So this was the exhibition of the CAS 50 collection that went up 2.5 years ago for 3 months, allegedly, or initially. And then because of everything, it ended up being up there for 2 years. I've only just taken the work down. Not that people saw it for 2 years, of course, these offices were not really open for a long period of time. So we've exhibited work here. When I say here, I mean the BCS. I've also got access to a number of spaces in Leicester. So this is Jeff Davis's work at the Leicester exhibition we did of his work. That was at a gap during lockdowns, I think.
Yeah, it's June.
Yes, Leicester was hit by a lot of lockdowns. So we managed to find a gap in lockdowns and did this really nice exhibition. Jeff came up and so on. This is work created on the ZX Spectrum and BBC microcomputers in the 1980s. So it is historic digital artwork. And what you'll see out here is we have this work on show as well. And I'll explain what's going on there. And there's Jeff standing next to some of the work. We also have access to another space in Leicester called Beta X, which is a community art space. And I did an exhibition of work by what I'm calling pioneering Leicester digital artists. Everywhere has a history and a heritage. Not everywhere tells the story. So I've decided to tell the story of Leicester's history and heritage of computer art. I'm not saying that we've got an amazing heritage that's better than everyone else's, although I think we probably have. But even so, we have, starting in the late 1960s, Stroud Cornock, Ernest Edmonds, Stephen Scrivener, Stephen Bell. Maybe I might squeeze myself into that very impressive list of people, and others. We have a very lively contemporary art scene. So I've been collecting work by Leicester digital artists, such as this work by Stephen Scrivener. And one strand really of what we have in this archive is good representation of work that was made in Leicester. These are printouts made in the early 1980s. Wow. On dot matrix paper, and they had Leicester Computer Centre written in the bottom because they were a computer job, as they were called. Even though it was an artwork, it went out as a job and they had the job number on the bottom. I like that sort of detail on things. So we have the space, the Vita-X space, as well as the LCD depot space. And of course, we have the exhibition of work here. So this is the work we have here on display at the moment. Which does look nice. So to mention the work here, so we started by having an exhibition 2 years ago from the CAS 50 collection, that's staying up for much longer than we planned. And we had the sort of promise and the privilege of being able to show work here at the BCS. And what we've done to enable it to be managed more easily is we've created a space near the door, which is 20 framed pieces that will be printed for each exhibition to fit those frames. It will be easier to swap out the artworks a day's visit rather than having to come a number of times. And we'll try to have new work here every 3 months. So the current exhibition is July, August, September. Then I hope to have Ernest Edmonds showing work in October, November, December, January, February, March. And then the one after that, April, May, June. No, it's the one after that, July, August, September, during EVA again. I hope to make an annual open exhibition. So every year we'll print out 20 invited and contributed works, and we'll have a mini exhibition here at the BCS. There's also another space, which is the main communal area, which at the moment has an exhibition of work by Flux, contemporary digital artists. And I see that space it is available to us, but exhibitions will be organised on a fairly ad hoc basis. So I won't have this tight schedule that we have with the framed pieces, fixed framed pieces. So we should have a lot of artwork coming into this London BCS office. And of course, Computer Art Society is a subgroup, a special interest group of the BCS. So hopefully we're offering value to the BCS, and they're most definitely offering value to us, having a space like this available to us. So if we look at how this impacts what we're doing with CAS. So I think like probably every organisation, the last couple of years have been difficult. It's been hard to organise things, things have been cancelled. We just look at EVA. I think 2 years ago, what did we do? We had to cancel, and then we had the November online one. Then last year we thought, oh, it's bound to be physical or at least hybrid, and it wasn't. It was online again, and now we're hybrid this year. Maybe we're going to be hybrid forever now. I guess Jonathan Graham may have opinions on that. So everything's been in a state of sort of flux, if you like. Yes. However, there are certain things that have come out of the last couple of years that I certainly feel committed to, and I think other members of CAS, such as Nick, agree are valuable things. So I would like to see us having a new CAS website. I've been archiving off the existing materials, of which there are lots, so none of that will be lost, but we'll have a new CAS website that people can maintain and update. We're going to relaunch Page. Now, Page was the long-time newsletter, stroke magazine of the Computer Art Society. I'm going to take over a stint of being the editor, and I have 8 issues I'd like to do, 8 or 9 issues. And these are going to be magazines that will feature, almost become the catalogues for the exhibitions that we have here. So that's quite an interesting project, I think, to focus on. I'll be updating lots of people regularly. I'd like to do 3 issues per year. It's quite a commitment, but I'm at a point now where I think I can commit to doing that. We'll also have these regular BCS exhibitions. I'd like there to be 4 a year, every 3 months. And we'll also have the more ad hoc exhibitions in the other space. I'd like one of the entrance exhibitions to be member contributed. And all of these materials will become part of the archive. So if I'm saying I'm committing to maybe 3 years of this programme, at the end of that 3 years, I'd like us to have 9 special issues of pages, and maybe we'd have done 12 exhibitions, I think that would be a good contribution to the archive for maybe somebody else to take over after that.
Bravo.
So I feel that we're in a nice, strong position. We've survived lockdown, both the archive and the Computer Arts Society. As Nick mentioned, there are going to be a few personnel changes, and Nick would like to move on after a long period of being chair, which opens up opportunities for people here or online to maybe consider volunteering their efforts and becoming involved in CAS, potentially as a chair or co-chair, certainly in some of these other activities, or helping with the website through to organising events and so on. So I would say we've had a productive time over the last couple of years, but now I think we're just in that position where we can start doing more exciting things. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my programme just to remind myself. Oh yes, microarts. So the microarts exhibition is well presented online because we've actually had a number of showings of it. We've had the showing in Leicester that was potentially meant to be a couple of years ago, and now we have the showing here in London at the BCS Moorgate, and we've got materials from the first showing in particular, but also we're starting to collect materials from this showing appearing online. Oh, I think I've got a few people wanting to come in. So microarts, I think, is an interesting one to look at. I was going to do a bit of a roving camera thing, but I think that might just be too risky. The feedback I heard earlier was not good, so in terms of noise. So what I would suggest is for those online, go to the Computer Arts Archive website and you'll find videos, pictures and text from Jeff's exhibition. You can read it on there, but microarts was established in the mid-1980s. It was distributed as a cassette magazine. So those of us who remember the ZX Spectrum, I remember buying magazines in WH Smith's if you're in the UK, and they would often come with a cassette on the front. That cassette would have programs on. Well, Jeff distributed a cassette initially with programs for the ZX Spectrum, artworks running on as a on there. Also one on the BBC Micro. Martin Roots produced work for the BBC Micro. You'll see some of that in the exhibition. And then later on, he moved to the sort of teletext, the pre-internet information systems, teletext Prestel sort of world. And again, that's covered in the website. So I'm really pleased that we managed to get Jeff. I'm looking over at Jeff because he is here with us. I'm really pleased that we managed to finally get the work up here because I think it's work that deserves to be seen. And I think it's for certainly, well, I was going to say for people a bit older, but actually for all digital artists, it shows that artists create work with the technology that is available to them. It doesn't have to be the latest supercomputer with fantastic 3D worlds spinning around in the metaverse. Creative people will do interesting things with whatever technology they can get their hands on. And for computer artists, important things happened in the 1980s where people were able to get a computer in their homes. And of course, people like Jeff, Martin and so on did creative things with it. So please have a look online or physically at that exhibition. And then I was going to hand over to John to talk about his book launch. So what I'd say is a minor introduction there is for John's work, I have a particular interest in it because back in the 90s, when I was doing my early stage career, some of those ideas that are now being realized perhaps in a more sophisticated way were being talked about. The idea of a cyberdelic universe where technology and other things mix. And so it was an imagining at the time, and there were certain things happening that may be giving us a peek into that world, but it's more of a reality now. And we need people like John to give us little roadmaps for how technology can be used, not just rely on Mark Zuckerberg and others to tell us how technology is going to be used. So what I'll do now is I'll hand over to John and he'll talk a bit about his book, and he'll probably tell you how to get a copy. And people here, I think there might even be a few copies for sale. Yeah. One of those sorts of USB.
Okay.
Do you have a website you can visit?
Yeah, if we just go to the website.
Right, so I am just going to stop this screen share and then head over to the browser. You've seen the program there. It's a bit of that sort of inception, I guess. Share screen.
Something
Is that the one?
There's one message.
Oh, okay. Okay, I thought you could type it there. So that's now being shared.
Could be important.
Okay, so can people see that shared screen? Is that being shared?
Yep, well, it is here.
Okay, good. Right, I'll hand over to you, Elizabeth.
Yeah.
So can we just double check that everyone can see the screen? There's
There's a chat message.
There's one little, which it could be critical. Explosion.
Okay, so
John, do you want to
Yeah.
just double check the screen is being shared? I'm trying to think. That is
It
just
says-
mirroring.
It should be. It says stop share at the top on this one. which
Okay.
would
You have to
Suggest
turn off the
a
sharing.
sharing is happening.
Mhm. Okay, I think we're fine.
Yeah, so yeah, I'm going to do sort of a condensed version because a lot of people here have sort of already heard me speak about it. But yeah, basically, so my new book is Explosions in the Mind, Composing Psychedelic Science and Visualizations. And yeah, it's out now. You can get a copy. It basically talks about my projects, my own kind of creative projects I've been doing for sort of the last 10 years or so. It goes from around sort of 2007, when I started my PhD at Keele, doing things with computer music, to more recent things that I've been doing. So it goes through kind of computer music, visual music films, and more recent things with virtual reality, and all essentially related to the idea of kind of representing altered states of consciousness, and in particular, the idea of kind of synesthetic experiences where you might see visuals in response to sound and music, basically. And my kind of route for this was kind of firstly sort of becoming interested in kind of psychedelic music when I was a teenager, but also kind of growing up with sort of computers like the Atari ST in particular. So I kind of started doing sort of games and things and playing around with sound on the ST, you know, from the age of sort of about 8 or 9, I think. So me and my brother used to make games. We had like a public domain game out around that time, which has my 8-year-old voice doing the titles on it. So all of my work's kind of a synthesis of basically sort of computer technologies and this idea of psychedelics. And for me, the interesting thing is to try and create with kind of pixels and that sort of neon glow of screens and things, this idea of the sort of hallucinations that you might see of a sort of synesthetic nature, basically. And yeah, the rest is in the book. So if anyone does want to get a copy, I've run out today, but if anyone is at the EVA London conference tomorrow or the day after, I might have some. And I've also got a discount code, which is on the paper thing in the stand at the front. So you could use that to get 20% off.
You should type it into the chat, perhaps.
Yeah, yeah, I'll do that in a sec. So, yeah. Does anyone have any questions about the book or anything?
I'm just thinking, what's about your future work? How's the book informed what you fancy getting on to?
Well, it sort of goes kind of chronologically, and the sort of end point is the kind of VR stuff that I've done most recently. So my last project was, yeah, sort of Cyber Dream. I can probably look this up actually. Yeah, so this one was like basically a VR project which I had at SIGGRAPH Asia, which was basically a kind of interactive, this is the older version actually, but it's basically kind of an interactive sort of rave music visualization. And in the newer version, you can kind of like control synesthetic visuals and things. So this is kind of like the things I'm most interested in at the moment. I guess it ties into some of the sort of metaverse stuff that we were talking about this morning, because this is kind of like what I would want to see in a metaverse, basically. So it's, yeah, kind of colourful things and psychedelic things and sound and music, be able to kind of create that. The only thing I haven't done with things like this is it's sort of a solo experience at the moment. So I'd like to create a sort of networked version, maybe, where multiple people could be in it at the same time, sort of creating sounds and visuals and things together at the same time. So. Yeah.
Is this work online anywhere all the time, or is it just shown in exhibition spaces?
So actually, yeah, I mean, you can find some of these things. So, I mean, the book has lots of links to music and software as well, and it has like a beta APK for Oculus Quest for that that one. So some of it's available through my website. Some of it's kind of over the years been shown at sort of different conferences, sort of computer music festivals, things like that, and yeah, sort of a
It doesn't
mixture.
have a home like in Decentraland or Second Life or something like that.
No, it doesn't have anything like that. No. In fact, the Cyberdream one hasn't really been experienced by that many people, because I sort of finished it just as the pandemic was kicking in, and you couldn't really then show VR without sort of risks involved.
If you
So it's
remember,
been
John,
shown.
we included it in the Ars Electronic Garden Party.
Yes,
You remember?
yes,
So a few people saw it then.
yes,
This
but
time
they
last
haven't
year.
seen it in
Yeah.
VR.
Yeah, that's
most
right.
people.
That's
So,
right, yeah.
but it was shown at SIGGRAPH Asia in Tokyo, where they had it on a VR headset,
Yeah.
but I wasn't there. So
Pity.
yeah, Dominic.
What I'm interested in is, do you rather feel restricted or inspired by the software limitations? Whichever you use.
I don't think I've normally felt restricted by the software limitations, because normally, at least with a lot of my recent stuff, I'm kind of working with sort of game engines like Unity and things like that. So it's kind of, it's only limited by how long I've got to sort of write the code and things for it, I guess.
Just take that example where the cubic clouds become larger and bigger and change their color. This is a typical Houdini thing. And I would say that having practiced Houdini just a little, you quite quickly get to that point. But it still looks like Houdini. It doesn't look like a real synesthetic psychedelic dream. It's primarily a computer graphics thing. So this is why I asked you that. I could absolutely accept that you say the software is something that inspires me to work it out at its own limits, so that you do not feel restricted. That's the question. I mean, do you sort of constrain yourself involuntarily because the software doesn't give you what you really dream when you listen to music? Or do you rather play around with the software and try to think of what it can do for you? So being inspired rather than restricted.
I think it's a little of both. So like those particular bits are all, they're not done with Houdini, but they're just done with kind of like sine waves. So it's kind of like quite a simple bit of code.
Yeah.
But I guess it's always like, if I wanted to do other more interesting and complex things than that on the next piece, maybe it would be kind of like, how long have I got to work on it, sort of thing. So I don't think I feel that.
So rather inspired than restricted.
Yeah, we'll go with
Okay,
inspired.
that's fine.
And also because I think a lot of the sort of aesthetic influences come from things like earlier sort of Atari STs and things like that, where part of those limitations is a sort of aesthetic appeal. So yeah, I would go with the inspired one.
Just a quick question. Have you thought of using AI visualization tools like DALL-E and so on to create a more informal kind of 3D environment rather than something based on software, just arises from the training data as visuals, and often you can't predict what's going to come out. You can describe it in advance and then it will produce it. Would give a user a control to put in keywords and then get certain types of experience.
Yeah, I think that isn't an area that I've explored.
Because that's moving away from music, I suppose.
Well, I mean, it could be related to
Yeah,
music
I'm
still,
just curious.
but it's not a trajectory though.
Because you're
I've
dealing with
explored at
music
the moment.
and the synthesis of
Mm,
things, yeah.
Cool. I think time for more wine.
Well, thanks for that, John. Well, I think the more wine has been mentioned, so I think we'll probably finish our online stuff, but we have opportunities here, obviously, to carry on socialising. For those of you who've just popped in for this evening, remember EVA is on all week, and I don't know if it's possible to buy a day ticket or whatever to come in.
Sure. I had just a question about the archive.
Oh yeah.
So you're collecting work. So are you collecting up to 2000 or before that? Or I mean, if there was an open call out, I mean, I've seen these.
Okay,
examples,
so the question about
Rhizome or something,
yeah.
do a call out people to contribute or support forward their work.
So the curatorial policy isn't purely based around how old the work is. I'm happy to include contemporary work. It'll probably be based around themes though. So as a curator, I'm always interested in a theme, identifying what connects a body of work, even if there's 20, 30, 40 years between the pieces.
So are you collecting different themes? I mean, I'm just wondering how you or CAS are thinking about that kind of thing and how to get
Personally, I wanted to build a collection that was representative of 50 years of digital art history, but also, again, personally, I have themes I want to explore. So I was interested in starting to explore 1980s digital art, and obviously Jeff was good for that. I want to explore women in digital art because they're often underrepresented, particularly in the art and historically. And so therefore I might have to look at contemporary work to represent that. And then another theme is Leicester. I want to explore my own city and that sort of thing. But of course there are opportunities for other people to curate. I'm just getting the thing going, but I'd love to get other people in building collections and using the work creatively.
We did have a female artist in micro arts actually in the 80s.
Okay, yeah.
The first known example of quantal art in 1984. We had a piece in the magazine. So we did have representation from diverse audiences then because we were a kind of alternative
By the way,
organisation.
women aren't necessarily diverse, they're just 50% of the population.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get you.
Yeah, sure.
Sean, I was wondering whether, I think you've seen there's another drink, I'm not certain, but before that, do you think we should go up to the exhibition and you should declare it open, or Jeff should declare it open?
Or maybe Jeff can declare it open.
Jeff, I think, should go to his exhibition and declare it
I
open.
might be alone.
No, we'll come with you.
Jeff, you may want to talk to us.
So I think that will have to
Yeah,
be something for the
yeah.
people here. So there was another quick question before we finish
Right.
up. Yeah.
How strict is the collection bound to digital? As we had a discussion with Andy this morning about computational or digital, is computational art also possible to? be
Well,
entered?
for me, I'm a computational artist and I use technology, computers, to make my works. So personally, I think computational work is central to it.
And the second question, if it's sort of conceptualized about the computer way of designing, but neither conceptual, neither computational nor digital.
Okay, well, like I say, I happen to be the curator at the moment, but I can open it up for everyone else. So from my view, I've always had a fuzzy boundary around digital. There's work in the collection that is hand drawn
That's what I mean.
because
Okay.
an artist is engaging in a computational process. They're not using a computer, but it's computation.
And the third question, does it need to be a physical or digital original, or is also entries referring to works that are sold out, whatever?
Okay, so question about what nature of the work.
Yeah.
I wrote a paper about it for EVA 2 years ago. That was going to be part of the launch about the collecting strategy. And I saw us starting with prints because they're easy to collect, manage, and post them, this, that, and the other, look after them, moving up through videos, interactive work, and then ultimately algorithms and computational definitions. Personally, I think the boundaries have to be fuzzy because digital art is not a thing. It's not like well, there's no art form, it's a thing, but you can't say that is digital, that isn't. It's always going to be a subjective opinion.
Thank you. Will you be collecting NFTs?
Maybe we should finish there.
Okay.
NFTs, my view on NFTs is I've been interested in them, I've created a few, and I've concluded it's an initiative by people with lots of crypto to diversify their crypto.
Yes. Yeah.
But, right, but yeah, so I think we'll finish there, and we'll carry on having some wine. And for those of you out there, I hope this worked for you, that you didn't get too lost. And we'll go and have a little look at Jeff's exhibition as well.
Yeah, thank you, Sean.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Somebody wants to
So
look at
thanks,
the
Nick. Did that work all right, do you think?
art. I'm going to get a drink first.